Welcome back to Indy Housing Market. My name's Kyle Morris with Morris Property Group and FC Tucker.
I'm Shelly Walters with the Shelly Walters Realty Group and FC Tucker.
And we have a special guest today. I'll let him introduce himself.
I'm Eric Todderud with Caliber Newrez.
Thanks for coming on. So we had some questions, what was it, 2 weeks ago, that about the home buying process for new homeowners, first-time homeowners. And we kind of want to dig into it a little bit. Obviously, we'll get into the stats, pulse of the market, and all that stuff. But we really want to take this opportunity, especially with the spring market kind of okay, so I was going to say the spring market rolling around, but the spring market is already here. We've had, we kind of predicted it would start at the beginning of March. It's happened, what do you think, maybe like 2 weeks ago? It started when we first started talking about it?
Yes, at least.
But one of the things I was thinking about, the disproportionately warm weather has kind of, we couldn't get a read on that.
30 today.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's all over the place. But 70 in February is crazy, right? Yeah. So, but it's had people out and about. When I was at a listing appointment yesterday, and I mean, there was flowers blooming.
I know all the flowers started showing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy. So I mean, it's getting everybody in the mood. It's giving everybody a false sense of security that it's going to be warm because everybody knows we'll still get snow in April here in Indiana. But at my gym, they're mulching it already, which is insane to me. But
Punxsutawney Phil didn't see his shadow, right?
He didn't.
That's why.
What does that mean?
Punxsutawney Phil. So
I know who it is, but I forget. I never know what it means.
So it means early spring.
Early spring.
If
he doesn't, yeah.
I won't remember that.
Normally he does. He didn't this year.
Big shout out to Bill Murray and Groundhog Day. One of my favorite movies ever. It does not get enough credit as a comedic classic. Sorry to go off.
Okay, so anyway,
I'm sorry. Anyways,
we are here to talk about. We had something that showed up in regards to a person asking what it would take to be a first-time home buyer, what kind of rates they could get if they had this kind of credit score, that kind of credit score, and all the so-called first-time home buyer funds programs that we still hear. Like I was saying earlier, we get a phone call. I always hear, well, I want that $8,000, first-time home buyer credit. That was like 2010, but people are still trying to think that, so there's so much misconceptions out there. So we wanted to bring you in and just kind of, let's talk about what a new first-time home buyer, or just anybody, but really more like a first-time home buyer, we're here today.
Yeah, like what they're going to run into.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for inviting me on here. This is a huge
of course.
honor. So, I get a lot of calls to first-time home buyer, what kind of programs are available for me? And the answer is it really depends. It depends on a lot of different factors, credit being one.
Let's go with that real quick.
Yeah.
So just dive into it so we don't lose any of it.
Absolutely.
So walk through the credit piece, right? So so you got prime credit, like you can explain that, right? So prime rates, all of that. Because people think they have to have like a 760, right? Or, people be like, oh, I have a 590, but they have like a 640. Like people just don't. It's one of those things that people talk about in an educated manner, but are in general just uneducated about, for the record, right?
Right. And so, rates. Really, especially for first-time home buyers. Let's talk about IHCDA, for example, and I'll expound more on it.
That stands for Indiana
Housing
Coalition?
I'd have to look it up.
Down payment assistance.
It's the down payment. IHCDA
Don't know what the C stands for.
IHCDA is the down payment assistance program that Indiana offers, and you can go with a conventional or an FHA mortgage. They fix that rate regardless of credit score. And so credit score is not going to affect your rate on that program. It may affect, your credit profile may affect your ability to get approved for that loan. 640 being the minimum credit score for that program.
Okay.
So right there's the first answer to that.
640 for down payment assistance
for the
state.
down payment assistance program from Indiana.
Yes, and there are some other programs as well. And depending on income limits, we can back out credit score, what we call credit score pricing hits, meaning your credit score, depending on where your income is, and I'd say as far as clients that I talk to, probably well over half fall under the income limits that are required. We can also back their pricing hits out, and so your credit score doesn't actually affect the rate you are getting. So whether you have an 800 or you have a 680, if you're under that income limit, we can back that out and you're getting the exact same rate.
So a question on that one, is there a income limit 100%? You have to make this much money or you
less.
could not afford to purchase a home in any of the programs. So like if they make 40,000, is it like say no, you just can't do it? Or is that all based on debt to income and all that?
So debt to income comes into play, but I'm actually talking about income limits as far as you have to be under a certain amount.
Right.
So
it's like it's been a while, but isn't it like it's higher than what you would think? I feel like it was like 80 as a single and 150 as a
it depends
dual.
on which program you're going with. Fannie Mae Home Ready and Freddie Mac Home Possible is a percentage of area median income.
Okay.
In these counties, it's just below 78,000. And you have to be.
So it's city specific, county specific, zip code specific.
County specific.
Okay.
But that's single person, correct? That's not or is that family?
That is
or household.
That's
household.
Qualifying income.
Okay, so that's household.
So
yeah.
And if you're over that, then yeah, we'd have to look at a different program. Now there's a what we call CAMI, which is conventional AMI, and that has a higher income limit. Closer to just under 100,000. It's like 97 some change, I believe. And same deal with that. We back out credit score hits for first-time home buyers. That is a first-time home buyer specific program. But again, if you're an 800 credit score, you're a 680, 660, you're getting the same rate because that credit score rate adjustment is backed out.
So for that program, you can do it with a 640. I think lowest I've ever seen on a mortgage that got approved is like around 580, 590. That was kind of case specific, but I know there's a couple programs that do that.
Yeah. So 580 is going to be the minimum and I'll just say that different lenders have different minimums. FHA, for example, our minimum is 580 for a 3.5% down. FHA.
But a different, other than Caliber, so like maybe a Fairway or Howard Hanna or somebody, it may be different.
It could be because FHA, they don't have. Whereas conventional is, for us, if you're putting a low down payment on a conventional, 620.
And the lowest you can pay on a conventional is
3%.
Correct.
And what's the difference between FHA and conventional for anybody who's interested in seeing why? Because like you had said earlier, when somebody calls you and says, I want to buy a house and I want the first-time home buyer credit or whatever they think is out there, whatever they think, you have to sit down. And like everything you've said so far is a lot to talk about.
Absolutely.
So one human being coming and sitting in front of you will qualify or have a better program than the next person that comes in. So there is no coverall.
Absolutely. It's so specific to someone's individual situation.
So their income, their credit score, where they want to purchase,
how much funds they have available.
That's another
because one thing that I will say is in IHCDA's Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority.
Ooh, so we're way off. But the letter still worked for us.
The letter still worked for us. So the IHCDA down payment assistance loans, for example, they give. There are different programs that give 6%, 3.5%, and 2.5% to the buyer of the purchase price.
For down payment or for closing costs?
So the 6% you can use down payment and closing costs. And you can use it
wherever.
Down payment and closing costs.
Yeah.
Now, it comes with elevated closing costs. So the price that you get for the loan in terms of closing costs is going to be higher.
So you pay for it.
And so you pay for it. And so that's a great program for somebody who genuinely doesn't have a ton of money and they really, really need that down payment assistance. And so it really takes digging in with that client and seeing what's important to them, what they have available to them, what do we have to do to get you into a home? Because there's also, we have that, I was telling you about the ResSource program, which is, it is essentially a Freddie Mac Home Possible program, 3% down, conventional. And so you're going to have much lower closing costs. You're going to back out the credit score hits. They have to fall underneath that 800 income limit for these counties. Now, some of the counties that are outside of here, they have lower income limits than that, so it's all county specific. But in that program, we also give our company as a grant gives 2%, so it's a 3% down conventional loan, but we're giving 2%
of the purchase price.
Of the purchase price
Up to $5,000.
Up to $5,000.
Yeah.
And so,
that's huge, though. That's a lot.
Correct. Yeah. So for less closing costs, if you have 1%, and you can bring 1%, you can pay less closing costs and bring that 1%.
And what's that program called?
That is called Res Source, is what we call it.
And it's from your company.
Source. Yes. And so we source those funds. And a big difference in that is that there are not strings attached to that, the money that comes, the grant.
They don't have to pay it back.
Yeah, correct. Okay.
Because there are programs out there that you can get some grants up front, but you have like limitations on that. Living in a house at a certain amount of time,
so
paying it back if you don't. All that kind of. I mean, there's always.
Yeah,
not everything's free, right?
No, it's not. There are strings attached, and so IHCDA, while it's a great program we do, I have a lot of clients that want to opt that direction. There are different amounts of time that they give you what's called a forgivable second lien. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so the down payment assistance is a second lien that doesn't have a payment, and if you want to sell the home within a certain time frame, you owe that back.
I think one of them's 7 years and one of them's 9 years.
So they just changed the 9-year on the first place. It's indefinite, so you owe it back
no matter what.
No matter what. That one has just changed at the beginning of this year to 9 years. The other one, the next home, which gives a little bit less, it gives 3.5 or 2.5. That's 3 years. Okay. Which is a little bit more reasonable, but you get less down payment assistance.
What if you refinance?
So at this point, you still owe it back. However, the
refinance time, unless it was after 3 years.
Correct. Now they are.
It would just get rolled, though, wouldn't it?
It would just you would have to have enough equity to roll it into into a cash out refinance and pay that off. Now, there has been a lot of talk, and it hasn't come out quite yet, about an IHCDA refinance program where you don't have to do that. Oh, and so that is coming. When is it coming? Mm-hmm. We don't know.
That's like insider information. I like this.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't be talking.
Can we go to jail for this?
but that's been on the
this
horizon.
Just shows it's changing constantly. So like how I opened and said that people are calling and asking about the 2010 programs. They're gone. Last year's programs are gone. This month we have a new program. I don't know, but they're always changing.
Well, and they're getting advice from their parents who haven't bought a house in 20 years.
Or
right?
they know.
Things are so different.
They know what they heard the last time they even looked into the market, because many people, if they're looking for a home, they're in the market.
Yeah.
When they're not looking for a home, they're not paying attention at all. They don't care. So when it comes back around 10 years later, they're like thinking of everything they knew 10 years ago. And this market is constantly changing, especially for the first-time home buyers. And talking about these, can another person who's not a first-time home buyer also qualify?
Depending on the program. IHCDA, no. But for this Res Source program and your Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac home ready and home possible programs, yes. Yeah, you don't have to actually be a first-time home buyer. And so
so many people think FHA is for first-time home buyers. Yes, but also no.
FHA is another one. Yeah, so FHA, and you asked me before the difference between FHA and conventional, and a couple things. FHA requires a 3.5%. Conventional, you can go down to 3%. FHA has higher debt-to-income thresholds, so you can potentially afford a little bit more house. FHA comes with 2 different types of mortgage insurance, upfront, which is rolled in the loan, and monthly. And so there are some differences.
That's what makes that program kind of expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's there are some drawbacks to it. It is now if you have somebody who has maybe they're over that income limit to back out the credit score hits, but their credit is a little bit lower. It can be a way more affordable way to purchase a home because the mortgage insurance is so much lower on that than, for example, if somebody is in that mid 600 range, and and wants a conventional loan. It might make more financial sense to go FHA. And that's really where getting on the phone with your lender and having them run those scenarios side to side can be really helpful, because otherwise you just don't know.
Yeah, and speaking of that, this is one thing in the past couple of years, it's reminding me. So if you have an FHA loan with the PMI on it, that can go away if their house becomes, what's the difference?
So for conventional, it goes away at 78%. FHA, it stays on for the life of the loan.
Okay, so the conventional is the one where we can actually reach out to our clients right now who may have got that house 2 years ago. They can get rid of their PMI because their houses have gone up so much in the past couple of years.
Well, and so that is and I'll just say it's based on the original appraised value of the loan. And so
so it's not what the current value of the house becomes.
No, because
that's good information.
Yeah, now if rates have come down and we write a new loan and get a new appraisal on it, then yes, easy. Or if rates have stayed the same and we want to get rid of the PMI, you can do that. But if when the loan was originated, it appraised for 200, that's what we're going for.
Interesting. Okay.
So a couple other questions, right? So things I get asked about. I mean, I was even talking about it a little bit yesterday with some newer agents. It kind of stemmed out of, there's this. Especially with new agents, they believe, people don't want to talk to me about this stuff, friends and families, because, like there's this whole stigma about like, oh, I don't want you to know, what I have. And
what
first
your
of all,
income is, your credit score.
Yeah, the narrative of that actually is the reality. People don't want you to know how little you have, right? That's where it really comes from. And for the record, like, everybody is in that boat for the most part. Like, I would say that is the broader situation of most people we run into. It's not like everybody's sitting on trust funds and stuff like that. Everybody's just doing the best they can, hasn't saved enough, like has got some credit hits, And so, like, I wish people would get around that narrative. I'm a professional. Nobody finds this stuff out. I don't really care. I don't know. I think there's just like a false narrative around that. But so one of the things that comes up is, how much is this going to ding my credit score, right? For you to pull this, like that's always a big question. And then when people do have a low credit score, because I know you and I've worked together a ton, and so it's, somebody will be like, oh, I want to get my credit score up. I'm like, well, like call him, because he can somebody who's at like a 600 trying to get to a 640. It's not as difficult as you think. It doesn't take as long as you think.
How fast when you get the credit help. So calling and saying, I want to buy a house. I don't think I can now, which is getting to our next conversation.
But they don't change anything, right? They just want to keep making payments on their credit cards, thinking like doing that will get their credit score up, and like, no, like I could just literally save you money, do this one thing, and you're there, right? But they don't know that because they don't know how all the credit works and dings together.
Well, this is where we were, talking about too. If you're a first-time home buyer or a buyer specifically in any way capacity, is we need a pre-approval.
Yes.
So when you call and you say, I want to buy a house, the first thing is not to go look at houses and then find it. We have to have a pre-approval, because there's so much information that you need to know before you purchase that home that we need to know. And so that's not the first step, is to look at the house. The first step is to call you and figure out what the best program is. Do you need to fix your credit in any way? And also, what is that? Like, if you tell them they can afford a $250,000 house and their price is their monthly is going to be a certain amount, they may say, "Well, no, we can't do that."
Right.
So just because you say they can afford a house at this price, we need them to understand what that means to them, for them to say, "No, let's bring that down." And then you can say, "Well, 220, this is your monthly. Does that work?" Then you come to us and we look for a house under 220, because for you to just say 250 and for an agent to run with 250, that doesn't mean anything. It's what they can feel comfortable with.
Well, I mean, how much have you, especially in the past couple of years, I've had people who are like, we want to move, blah, blah, blah. We do all this and we get into it. And I'm like, with where you're currently at, because prices have gone up, this is a lateral move. Like, why don't we wait 6 months or a year? Let's improve some things, right? We'll see what interest rates do. And then you might be able to make the step up, because otherwise we're going to jump through a ton of hoops and go look at a bunch of houses that you're just going to get frustrated that is the same house that you're currently in to a certain extent.
Well,
right?
We were talking about that earlier too, is a first-time home buyer finally getting to, get ready to buy their first home, and their expectations and their wants and needs for the houses that they go and look at and the price point they can afford can be out of skew a little bit.
Oh, more than a little bit. I mean, so we're talking like, so my wife got her first house at like 22. It's like $100,000 house. Like I get that, that's a different price these days or whatever. It's just a little ranch. It was she and I, nowhere near, we were out on the west side, and we didn't work anywhere close to that. We were just trying to get a house and start building some equity. But I have people who are looking at their first house. That's like the house I live in, and it's my third house, right? And I just don't know if that's social media. I don't know if that's societal. I don't know what has bred that so much. But the idea, I want people to get a house, but the idea like the first house you buy is the house you're going to live in forever is just like, doesn't happen.
Because the average
I've never
is 5
seen
to
that
7
happen.
years. But on top of that is, you may have grown up like that in your family home, the most recent home you grew up in with your family. Just to think that that's going to be the kind of house that you could purchase, so a lot of times you'll get the $250 off, this is what you can afford is $250, and we go show them houses and they're like, oh, that's not good enough for me. It's like, well, that's what you can afford, but this isn't your only home. This is a stepping stone. Now you can start having, the interest rates for tax deductions. You can start building equity.
Which helps with the down payment on the next one.
Yeah, it's just a stepping stone. But to think that you're going to laterally move with your parents' house.
My parents' house that I grew up in was their third house also, right? But but they've lived in it since I was 8.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, everybody used to do that.
Right. But even then, it's like,
anymore.
oh, I love this house. Well, they were 38 when they bought it, something like that. And they're 74, 75 and still own it. But people are early 30s or late 20s trying to buy that house. And it's like that's a couple steps away, right? It's just reality.
We've talked before.
We have talked about this because I helped you buy your first house.
Well, you helped me buy my first house and the house I'm currently in. But we've talked before because we've worked with a lot of clients together, and I've said, man, you sell a dream, and then I'm the reality check guy, because you're right. It's really a good idea to, when I'm doing the pre-approval, I like to then also show people different. I do like payment charts. Hey, at 200, you're going to be, this is the payment to expect because guess what? You got taxes and insurance and maybe mortgage insurance in there if you're putting less than 20%.
And they always want to buy furniture too, so there's always these extras that
right.
you
know what a couch costs these days? Yeah. Oh my gosh, I just bought one. Man,
I saw those pictures. Big couch.
This big couch. I didn't have a couch like that in my first house. I can tell you that.
Right. Mine came from Goodwill. Five different houses probably.
I think my family donated us stuff.
Yeah.
But I just it's good to ahead of time before you go look at the $250,000, the $300,000 house, have a good idea of what the payment is going to be, what your funds to close are going to look like, so that you can go into it with.
And not be house poor the very first day.
And not be house poor and go into it with eyes wide open, because there's so many times where we've helped somebody and they're like, well, I want this level, but I want to pay this amount.
Yeah. That's, I think, what we're talking about.
And we're like, well, let's kind of bridge that gap a little bit and set some realistic expectations.
I do feel blessed that with my age, being about to be 45 in a month, I can walk people through that of what your life will look like 7 years from where they are and then 7 years after that. Because I kind of feel like 7 years, that's what we say with houses anyways, but 7 to 9 years, those are major milestones. To think that where you are at 27 is where you're at 36, right? Or where you're at 36 is where you're at 45, or 45 and 54. Those are major milestones within life of pivoting of your life, right? And so I can only tell somebody what, the next 20 years kind of looks like for them. And I have some examples of what it looks like the 10 ahead of me, right? But people are trying to buy this house that is either 15 years away from them or isn't going to matter in 2. And that's the hard part. And that's where people get so hamstrung on trying to figure things out on their own. Just call us. Talk to Shelly or I, talk to Eric, get all the pieces put together, and then you have a roadmap, and then it's not stressful, and you know what your next moves are, right? Because it's how do you improve your credit score? Like, I mean, to go back like what we were talking about.
You had said something earlier too, and it gets back to, like you said, call and talk to us. Agents need to not be afraid to have that conversation. Like you said, to say, oh, they don't want to tell me anything. If I don't know their situation, and I'm going to dive into it, if they don't tell me or don't want to tell me, I can't help them. Like, I need to know, like, if you're renting right now and you're paying $1,500 a month, let's start there. Are you comfortable with that, or has that just been draining you like crazy? You know, Eric comes in and says you can afford $250 and it's going to be $1,400 a month. You're like, that's still draining me. So if we don't start those conversations and dig deep, I mean, if the buyer doesn't want to tell me, at some point, if some of the things they won't tell me, I can't do my job.
Yeah.
Right.
But I can't be afraid to ask questions. They're personal. And I mean, I have a psychology degree. I use it all the time. But the conversations are personal. We are their advocate, their consultant, their person to get them through this process in their best interest.
Yeah, I think communication is the biggest thing. I mean, even if it's something that the client doesn't want to hear.
I think literally for every house I have sold, I've also told a client, like just as many as I've sold, and probably the same for you, I've told that many people to not buy a house as well.
Oh, like, I've heard you say, I don't think they should buy this house.
Or you shouldn't buy right now. Like after, you can go, everything can be in a line where they've agreed that they can do this payment, they've agreed to that price point. We go look at houses, and you just start to hear the conversations going on for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and you look at them and you go, you are not ready.
Yeah.
And that's where, as an agent, I'm not chasing commission.
Yeah.
I want to take care of my clients and be, their advocate. And if I see that it's not something they should be doing, or if they need to get back in front of you and run these numbers again, because I'm hearing something like all of a sudden they broke down a car and had to pay $5,000.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't stay on a course anymore. We've got to pivot. And so
there's just so much weird stuff with that, right? Like to the commission part, or I can't tell you, like, as a human or as a business owner, how detrimental that is to just put somebody in a house. Like, it just doesn't set with me as a human. As a business owner, it's a horrible business model to operate under. You're just going to get nothing but bad feedback and bad everything, right?
It's not a caring way to have business, You and I both put so much heart into what we do, and there's a reason. It's because we care about people and we care about their lives and their families. Right off the bat, as soon as I meet people, I just want to get involved to help them the best I can. And if they don't buy a house, if they can't buy a house or things change, that's okay. But I want to make sure what they do is the best for them.
And then people think about, so let's say somebody's approved a 350. I try not to put somebody to 350 if they're approved to 350, but be like, oh, well, we're looking at this house. Like, sometimes it's because I know I can negotiate it down or whatever it is. And I think there's this misnomer of well, yeah, you want me to spend that. It's good for your commission. Let's not get it twisted. This is where people don't run the math. This is $500 difference for me. That's not going to move the meter.
Right. But you know what? I don't think I've ever had anybody say that to me, because I don't think I ever put that air off, and I doubt you do too.
No, I've heard it.
Yeah.
I've heard it. I've never heard it with me and a client, but I've heard it in a conversation plenty of times.
Well, yeah, they get that feeling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course, because you make more money. And I'm like, not enough to deal with it like that, goodness gracious. So what else you want to give everybody on information?
I think we had a couple other questions here. We already covered amount for down payment, 3.5% FHA, 3% conventional, or if we go IHCDA, potentially nothing. And we can also do that 1% conventional where we're giving 2. How to get a lower interest rate? That's a really good question, and there's a couple different answers to that. There are.
It's how we can make the purchase agreement as agents is one.
Absolutely.
We can ask the seller to pay the points.
Absolutely, and that's where having a lender and an agent that work well together as a team is so beneficial for a buyer, because we're getting on the phone. Hey, the amount of times that Kyle's called me and said, all right, what's the cost of a 2-1 buy down? And I'll get into what that is on this property. And I can run it up. This is how much it costs. We have the seller pay that. We ask for it, and we're good.
Yeah, you can't just put in on a purchase agreement the seller to provide a 2-1 buy down.
No, because
Right.
The seller has no idea what that means.
Right.
Agents
Agents
don't
don't know.
I have to give the exact dollar amount.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I just dealt with it like a couple weeks ago, and they're like,
Oh. 2
oh,
weeks
that's
ago.
like, yeah, they're like, oh, that's $12,000. I was like, I need $7,780.
Right.
Exact amount. Yep.
Yeah, like I know exactly what I need.
And so that's where it comes in, where it's so beneficial, where we're working together. And so let's get into that. I mentioned 2-1 buy down. People are probably listening, thinking, what the heck?
We
is
talk about it a lot,
You
but
do?
it's
Okay,
still
good.
unknown, even by agents.
Yeah, and so there's something called a temporary buy down, and there's something called a permanent buy down. Permanent buy down, otherwise known as buying points, you're paying additional closing costs to lower your rate
For the life of the
For
loan.
the life of the loan, you're lowering the note rate.
And that's 1% of the purchase price is 1 point. Is that clear enough, or
So
more
1
than
point
that?
isn't even like a full percentage point.
Well,
either.
but yeah, that's so buying 1% of the loan amount is 1 full point. Now, does 1 point drop your rate 1 point? No.
1 percentage point. It does not.
1 percentage point?
Yeah.
No, it moves a lot slower than that, depending on where pricing is that day. Maybe you're looking at around a quarter of a point reduction for a full point buying, and that's just a ballpark. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. So it moves more incrementally for a large, a large sum of closing costs, but it stays for the life of the loan. So if rates never go down, not saying that they won't, hopefully they will, but if they never go down, you have a lower rate for the life of the loan. The note rate is lower.
Well, let me throw something in here, too.
ahead.
When you're talking about
Absolutely.
the 2-1 buy down, looking at it from the agent's point of view or the seller's point of view, if it is $7,000, your first price cut on that house is probably going to be more than $7,000. So you can have a $7,000 credit go to the buyer and not have to start the price cuts. And that's why it's a really good idea to
get
offer
it sold
that.
right off the bat.
Right.
And so yeah. So then we go into a temporary buy down, like a 2-1, a 1-0, 2-1, or 3-2-1 buy down, and that is different from from buying points. That is essentially. Are we running out of time here?
No.
Okay. That is essentially prepaid interest for the 2-1 is 2 points the first year and 1 point the second year, and that is actual percentage of interest for those years,
Yes.
and then back to note rate for years 3
So what
through
that
30.
means in just general terms is 6.8 today. They would start their first year at 6.8, goes down to
So on a 2-1, it'd be 4.8
The
the
first
first
year.
year. Second year would be 5.8, and then years 3 through 30 would be back to the note rate of 6.8. And now that's
a nice change for a couple of years.
It's a
It is.
big dollar
Yeah.
amount.
it is.
It's
And-
way
and
more
anybody can
beneficial.
do this. This is not a first-time home buyer program.
No, yes, good point. Yeah,
Anybody
anybody
can do it.
we can do it on any conventional loan, FHA loans we can do it,
And
so,
it has nothing to do with their credit score, their
No.
income,
No.
nothing.
No.
It's just a concession.
no,
I will say
right.
it has to do with the house. Like if there's a ton of interest in the house, yeah, you're probably not going to
And
get one.
yeah,
No,
and,
right,
and
yeah, it's
so
a
it makes
concession you
sense
can't ask
on
for.
those programs. That one, it really makes sense for a seller to pay it because it's just prepaid interest. It's the interest that you would be paying on those 2 points or that 1 point that second year. You're either having the seller pay it up front, or you would be paying it throughout those years through monthly
It's
payments.
just seller helping to cover the cost of the payments
In
for the first 2 years.
Yeah, and the idea with that is that hopefully rates come down before the end, before you get back
Right.
to note rate, and you can refinance into a lower rate before they come down. Whether or not that's going to happen or not, my
Nobody
crystal
knows.
ball isn't working
Right.
today.
Yeah. Neither is ours.
Unfortunately.
Not anymore.
So,
It broke a long
All right.
time ago.
So what do you have to have proof of?
well, that like 99% of my answers in the mortgage world,
Depends.
It depends.
I know what you mean.
But basic things. Okay, let's say that somebody's not self-employed, they're a W-2 employee. We're gonna need, number one, photo ID from everybody. We're gonna need
Valid.
photo ID,
Yeah.
not expired, please.
I just saw my mom's driver's license. It expired 5 years ago.
Yeah.
She doesn't drive, so
Yeah,
it's
she doesn't
okay.
drive, so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Most recent pay stub, last 2 years W-2s, proof of funds.
You mean taxes? Last 2 years taxes.
W-2s if you're W-2
Oh,
or
the
tax
W-2s, I'm
tax
sorry.
if you're self-employed, tax returns.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So if you're self-employed, we would need 2 years tax returns. And these are just general. Some different loan products in different scenarios require different things.
And this is the same for both first-time home buyers and everybody else.
Everybody.
And there's something about being a self-employed less than a year, right? That's
You need 2 years.
2
for
years
1099s.
self-employed. Yep. 2 years self-employed. 99% of the time there are certain things,
Depends.
but yeah, 2 years self-employed is pretty much the hard and fast rule. So,
And if you're self-employed, stop lying on your taxes for 2 years. 'Cause you're going to need it.
yeah, or at least
Not saying, I'm just saying.
it can help. I know you don't
Hypothetically
wanna
speaking.
I know you don't want to pay Uncle Sam, and I don't blame anyone, but we go by the
Reported,
income, reported earnings and taxable income.
Isn't it funny how somebody can live on $20,000 a year when they, say they make a
With
lot
their
more?
business,
Right,
that's
right,
like $4 million.
right.
This is all I made.
Right, and so
God bless them.
and so unfortunately we go for self-employed we go by taxable income. So we do need those tax returns to verify that, and I think I said proof of funds. If you're selling a home, then you can use the sale of the home and the net
sheet,
in
yeah.
proceeds and net sheet. If not, we will need to get most recent full bank statements from any accounts, or a gift letter if
Yeah,
you're
the
getting a
gifts.
gift from, because any of these programs you can get any of the programs that I've talked about, you can get a gift.
Is there a limit on the gift they can get?
No.
They can get the full down payment?
They can, from a family member. Depending on the different loan products have different gifts, donor
Parameters,
requirements. Generally, a family member, a spouse.
It has to be sourced too. You can't just funnel it. It has to be seasoned funds.
So for FHA, we have to get a gift donor's bank statement.
Yeah.
Conventional, we do not. So
Nice.
take that for what it's worth.
So I don't know. I want to keep doing this. I would love for people to keep sending us questions and all of that stuff. Like we can go down these rabbit holes all day just to educate people. This is what we do day in, day out.
We've touched a little bit on what we came to
Yeah,
talk about.
there's so much. I'd love to have you back on. So hopefully you're willing to do that. Maybe it's
happy
70
to.
instead of 30 on that day. We can do the
stats real quick.
stats real quick. I mean, it's just trending the same direction for me with Fishers and Noblesville. So in Fishers, I had 23 go on the market. 13 of them are still active, so 10 pinned within a week. I had 31 pinned.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a
Wow.
massive negative inventory in Fishers. There's 93 on the market, 43 days on market, but the median is actually 30. We've just got a bunch of stale stuff sitting out there. So if you're looking for a 2-1 buy down, go after the stale properties. That's where you're going to get it
And
at.
sellers should actually think about putting that in their listing.
Oh my gosh, I got so many examples on this where
Yeah.
we ended up arguing over the smallest amount for them just to not accept it and go back on a market, and then next thing I know, I see them offering, concessions that they could have just had with us. But Noblesville, I had 29 go on the market, 18 are still active, so 11 pinned. Only 24 pinned, so I did pick up a little bit in inventory there, but we're still at 93 on the market, 27 days on market, 9 median. I did do some math since we were talking about first-time home buyers right now, and we were talking about some realistic expectations to a certain extent. So in all of my board, the 16 donut counties, I looked for how many houses are on the market between 100 and 200, and there's 106. And between 200 and 300, there's 120. So there's properties out there. It just comes down to having a conversation of, like, what are we trying to do? Are we buying a forever home? Are we trying to get into the housing market so we can build equity to get to our forever home? Those are just conversations that you got to talk to like Shelly or I about, and then get with Eric to kind of figure out what a long-term game plan is like.
I want to throw in a little bit there. You said 106 in that price point, or 100, whatever your number was.
Yeah.
I was just showing in that price point. Some of those houses aren't even livable. So when
But some of them are.
Some of them are, but some
I have
of
a
them
really
aren't.
good one for
So that's just
175
saying
on
we
the
get
east
down
side.
to 50 livable houses that you could buy from in
Yep.
16 donut counties. So that's where a couple weeks ago I think we kind of did that paring down. If somebody's looking for a house on a certain price point, how many are there really when we're saying there's total of 81 active in the town? How many can they afford in what price point? Two?
You get into like Hamilton County, like that's
Well,
going
yeah,
to be
that's
an
a price point
investment.
that's a little
Yeah, it's
harder.
going to be tough. But you start getting into the other areas, and there's some stuff. It goes back into, you said you were showing a property in Lagodi, right? Like, I can get you a house.
We
where you want
got it on
where you want to
contract.
commute,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's like all that stuff has to come into play when we're talking about. Sometimes it's like, I can get you that house, but you need to drive a little bit further. Is that the concession that you're willing to make?
Yeah, they were 20 minutes from their work when they finally looked into it, and never heard of the town before, but it's working. So in Carmel, we had 27 hit the market. 11 of those total pended, but 29 for the whole 7 days pended. So we lost 2 in inventory in Carmel. Currently, in the past 7 days, the median was 9. Average was 41 days on market, and that is trending downward from the past 30 days. But currently active in Carmel, there's 81. There's 260 to 6 million, and 21 in Carmel are over 1 million right now of the 81. So then, and there's sold the past 30 days in Carmel were 75, and the average days on market was 44 and median 24. So like I said, past 7 days we went down to a median of 9, so that's good. But the list to sale ratio in the past 30 days in Carmel was 101%.
Yep.
So we are going back to above list offers and acceptance. So Westfield 19 hit the market. Only 6 pended in the past 7 days of those that hit the market, but 25 total pended last week. So we lost 6 in inventory. Average days on market was 51 and 27 median. So they're staying about the same all the time. Active, there's 165 in Carmel. There's 235,000 to 3.4 million. 106 of those active are new builds. There's 15 over 1 million. So there's only actually 59 resale properties available in Westfield. There's sold past 30 days, 108. Days on market was 50 and 31 median, so staying about the same for the past 7 days. Listed sale ratio in Westfield is 96%. That's because I looked at all of the sales, and that includes a lot of new builds. So what that shows us is new builds are giving you a little bit of a price break. And they also are probably offering some interest rate breaks as well. So again, Westfield looks like a new build process would be maybe a good idea. In Zionsville, 5 hit the market. 3 of those pended, so a total of 4. Average days on market and median are averaging 50. 40 of them are currently active, anywhere from 250 to 7.9. There are 19 homes available in Zionsville over 1 million, and there's 22 that sold in the past 30 days, 99% list to sale ratio, and their median was 9 in the past 30 days, but it's gone up to 50 in the past 7. So Zionsville slowed way down for some reason a little bit, and those are my stats.
It's interesting. There's 21 over 1 million in Carmel, and there's 19 in Zionsville, and Zionsville's half the size easily, right? So.
Yeah, and there's such small inventory that 19 of the 40 are over 1 million, so 50% are over 1 million.
I was just comping some houses, and a lot of those are, I don't want to say Zionsville, but a lot of the houses I see are really dated too. So, but they're just really nice and big and on some land. But I don't know. Thanks for having us back. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, how would they get a hold of you, Eric?
You can either call me, 317-442-3457, or email me, eric.todderud, TODDERUD, @newrez, NEWREZ.com.
Best mustache in the loan game.
Or call Kyle and he'll get
call
you.
me. Yeah,
call Kyle and he'll get you in contact with me.
Right. To get a hold of me, it's Kyle Morris with Morris Property Group and FC Tucker. My number is 317-649-5122.
And I'm Shelly Walters with FC Tucker. My phone number is 317-201-2601. Thanks so much, and please don't forget to like or subscribe and send us your questions. It gave us an idea for today's show, and it was a really good one, I think.
It's really
Lots
beneficial.
of information, but like you said, everyone is individual, so you need to actually call you, sit down, and hear their story.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me on.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, everyone.